All right, good afternoon, guys. Last Zoom for the year. We've left the best till last. I'll introduce our very special guest in just a moment, but a couple of announcements before we get to him. We've only got one milestone this week. Last week we had a stack, but 100 games for Darcy Wright, so well done, Darcy. We've got some grand finals this week, the women's grand finals. So Division 2 reserves will be Jacob Danchenko, Steve Pringle. Division 2 women's grand final will be Mark Barnett and Aaron Raval. Division 1 reserves. Women's grand final, Makita Bond and Chris Lees. And the Division 1 women's grand final, Jay Burrell and Alex Howie. So well done to you all. Big day ahead for the women and big day for umpires. So having gone through that, I haven't got any other announcements. We'll get straight into our very special guest who I've been dying to speak to for a long time. And we've got him on a good week. It's the week before his final game and the week after a fairly eventful showdown. So we couldn't have picked a better moment to have a chat to Ray. Just a couple of stats about Ray. Started umpiring in the AFL back in 2004. I never knew that when I did AFL that I'd be handing over number 18 to an absolute legend, but there you go. He started in 2004 and has since umpired. I've got 388 games, but he might be able to correct me on that. That was the best I could find. We've got one more to come this Friday night. We'll chat about that. Umpired 3 grand finals, 2 in 2010 with the drawn grand final, 1 in 2019. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome to our Zoom Ray Razor Chamberlain. Ray, welcome along.
Hey, Cole, how you doing?
Yeah, terrific.
The OG, well, not the OG. Steve Hanley was the OG, wasn't he, with number 18?
He started it out, yeah.
But we are bound by that, if nothing else, mate. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. And I'm looking forward to fielding all the questions and hearing what people have got to ask about. So yeah, no, it's good to be here.
Excellent. Well, I've got a couple to start off, as I always do, but I won't hog too much of it. This Friday night, how are you feeling about it? Your final game?
Yeah, I tell you what. So I felt very comfortable. I made the decision by January this year that this would be my last season. And I had spoken to Dan Richardson, and to his credit, he kept it under wraps, which was very good of him. And there are a number of reasons for that. But the one being that none of us do it forever. Simon Meredith will try, but he'll fail. You can't do it forever. He's like Joe Biden, mate, 4 more years. Give us a spell, Joe. So I've had this grace period. I had 12 months last year where I didn't bounce the ball because my back is in a pickle. And so that was the first year since I debuted in finals that I wasn't picked for finals. So I've been very fortunate in that every year I've been physically able to be selected, I've been picked in finals since debuting, which was in my 53rd game or something. And so that was kind of like a grieving process in itself, Cole, if I'm super honest, because whilst I absolutely love the process of week to week with colleagues and traveling, and, the weekend was amazing for so many different reasons. I toe the line in pre-season with September in mind. That's how it's an elite level of sport. And so my view is that you need to bring a competitive elite attitude to what you're doing. And if you're not, that's cool. Then go to another level. There's a level of footy for everyone, right? And the AFL, if you're not going to do that and you're not going to aspire, then my personal view, and it's just mine, is that the AFL isn't for you. So I had that grieving process last year, knowing that was part of not bouncing. I sort of didn't want them to have a blue with the other umps around it. So I said, look, if you say I'm not going to do finals, no one will have a problem with it, right? And tick, I was proven right. So then, yeah, how do I feel now? I was fine until I was at the MCG yesterday, standing in the race with Chris Donlan's wife and his 2 daughters. As he was coming off the ground, he got about 5 meters from the boundary line, and he started bawling, Cole. The tears were coming down the big albino face. I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to need a strategy on Friday. So, which is so actually really cool to see him because I've never seen him. And I've known Chris for 30 years and I've never seen him in that state. And in many ways, it was really cool to see that outpouring of him and how much that meant to him coming off and that realization. So, I'm feeling good about it. I know it's the right time for me. I've had a process, but I'm going to need to give Friday a bit of thought after seeing what I saw yesterday with my great mate, Chris.
They couldn't have set it up any better. You being on Friday night, it's just perfect, really. And it looks like you're on with some guys you really enjoy umpiring with. Did you get to pick them, or were they just kind in sorting those guys out with it?
Oh no, look, there's always a degree of dialogue. It's very all of the umpires. It doesn't matter what level you're at. There's always a level of angst at different points with the coach. Oh, what am I doing in the twos, or why am I in the 18s and I'm not in the reserves? You know, it doesn't matter what level you're at. You're always aspirational and hoping and, all of that stuff. But I've got to give the AFL credit, and particularly Michael Jennings, who's our head coach. They've been very open and said, hey, write down a wish list. Now, we're not telling you're getting it all, but if you don't tell us what you wish for, how can we possibly know how to deliver that? And so I haven't got everything on my list over this last month or 6 weeks. But I've certainly got a fair bit of it. And I feel very, very grateful. And I'm very much looking forward to umpiring with the guys I'm umpiring with on Friday night, mate.
Yeah, and we'll be looking forward to an interview with BT at some stage. It has to happen, surely. Um,
He'll try his hardest, the big fella.
yeah. Now, this profile that you've built up over the time, how did it evolve? I mean, you've become a household name in the sport. It certainly wouldn't have been something you set out to achieve. How did it evolve?
Yeah, if I'm really honest, I had a lot of trouble. So I made AFL. It was 2007 was the first interview I ever did, Cole. Geesh was ringing me and wanting me to do this radio interview with Triple M. And I was telling him to get stuffed, which was a bit cocky given that I was about 2.5 years into my career. But I was like, I'm not doing it, mate. I don't want anything to do with it. I just want to umpire. And you got to remember, it was a different time then, mate. You understand that. It wasn't seen as like a all inclusive entertainment industry. There was they used to give out the Rixie medal. They called it after a guy who played ruck for St Kilda for worst on ground votes, right? And they named it the Rixie medal. So let's be honest, it wasn't too much kumbaya going on back in the early 2000s, all right? And so I was like, I don't want to be part of this. And Geesh harassed me, and I respect Jeff enormously, and he's a very kind man. He's been very good to me. And he said, listen, I'm not asking anymore. I'm telling you, it's on this Saturday. It'll be before your St Kilda Collingwood game. You're doing it. And in due course, you'll thank me for it. Well, so I did it. And that was the first time I said something silly like the dingo took the wrong Chamberlain or something like that. And Gary Lyon, he's still giggling now. He couldn't stop laughing, right? It was like he was 8 years old. He just couldn't stop laughing. So that interview went well. And so then the genie was out of the bottle in terms of BT and those guys and how they perceived me. And you can't take the quarter out of the water, right? So that was a way. And then, so it had very little to do with me, Colin. It had more to do with them. So BT's Comet was on a tear. He's calling Dion Prestia the human meatball, and I'm Razor Ray with the hottest whistle in the West, and all this sort of crap. And I found it very, very difficult because I understood Brian. We'd met, and I knew that it was just his genre, if you like, of broadcasting. And there was no personal disrespect, man. But then other people started to call me this razor, and no one I'd ever met and knew called me that. And so I found like it was quite patronizing at the time. That's how I viewed it. And I get really shitty and quite angry about it and frustrated because we didn't have a voice then. There was no way to try and speak up for yourself. It was, we didn't do any of that media, right? And then I got injured and had surgery, and I was out for 2 years. and I had a meeting to do with a foundation that my brothers and I have, and Damien Fleming was our MC, and he was a special guest, right? And Flem was unreal. He goes, mate, this is rolled gold for you. He goes, do you know how embarrassing it is to have to give yourself your own nickname? I have to call myself the bowlologist, right? And he was really lovely in the way he tried to support me. So I actually went and saw a psychologist, mate, and a counselor. And I did that for nearly a year because I had a lot of difficulty in handling the way people who had never met me were trying to portray me like they knew me. And it didn't sit well with me. And I knew that I was the problem, Cole, actually, because it's just noise, mate. It's people go, oh, you're the goat. No, I'm not. I'm not even close. Oh, you shit. No, I'm not. I'm not even close. I'm neither of those things. I'm somewhere in the middle, mate. And so I had to learn that. And so I took some time and I'd go and do the work. And so I decided, I promised myself if I got back from my surgery, I was going to lean in and I was just going to embrace it, mate. And I'm really glad that I did that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so are we. So are we.
Yeah.
Um, let's go back to last Saturday night.
Yeah.
How many showdowns have you done over your time?
A stack. Actually, it was funny. Travis Boak, I did his did he debut in the showdown? His first showdown, he was the best on ground. He was amazing. And he was very young, and I umpired in that game. And he said to me, he goes, yeah, how many? He goes, you've done a shitload of these. And I said, no, I love them, mate. These are the grouse. And then I remember later on in the night, after things had got a bit sideways, it was a lull, and he was in the middle of the ground, and he said to Dan Johannesson, baby face, and he goes, oi, how many of these you done? And Deej goes, none. He goes, they're different, aren't they? So it was brilliant. So yeah, I would say I would have thought a dozen, maybe more. Maybe a dozen. I've done a few. Yeah.
And you've done a lot of big games with the Victorian clubs, etc. How do you find the showdowns? Are they unique games?
They definitely are. They're different to derbies. Derbies for a while there, they were Wild West, mate. They were just turning up and they'd fight, and then at some point a football game would break out, right? And that was it was just nuts over there. But they've kind of petered that out a bit.
We're taking it over.
Where every time we come over, so this is no word of a lie. I was talking to a couple of people and the young fellas when we're going over on the plane, and I relayed this story to them. I said, I had no idea what was going to happen on the third quarter. I didn't foresee that. But I did say to a couple of people, I go, they don't like each other at all. And the way this is set up with Adelaide not being able to make the finals, Port going through what they're going through with all the noise with Ken, and now they're going to be in the top four. I suspect this will be a bit gnarly, right? And then I explained to the boys, there's nothing to stress about though now, because they just mess each other's hair up now. I go, my second game was the line in the sand game, Hawthorn Essendon.
Oh, yeah.
When I was on the bench and I ran out, I was on the ground for about 3.5, 4 minutes, Cole. Jason Winderlick got his jaw broken. Adam McPhee's head was half hanging off. Every time I turned around, nothing was happening. I'd look back and someone else had a facial injury, right? So I was on the ground for nearly 4 minutes. I did not see one reportable offence, and we know what actually happened. How did I not see anything, right? So I was kind of relaying this to the boys going, no matter what, we won't have to deal with that, which proved to be true. But of course, it was quite a unique evening. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, the Houston bump, big talking point, probably limited in what you can say with it being going through the tribunal. But I have my own views on it in that I can totally relate. Matt Stevick's in control. You would have been at a certain angle on it. I can understand why there was no free kick paid, but also I understand why they want to take that type of thing out of the game. What can you tell us about it?
Well, I think we can talk about the rules, right? We can talk about that. That's okay. And then you can marry that into the context of Rankin and Houston. So it's general play. So ball's been kicked inside 50. Mark Keane decided that his thumbs were stitched to his fingers, so he couldn't mark it. He punches it, and it gets knocked back in forward, yeah, and it's general play, so it's not a marking contest, it's not a ruck contest, and so you are permitted to bump in the game of Australian rules football still. The only thing being is if you elect to bump and things go sideways, regardless of your intention, you own it. It's on you. And so we know that to be true. If we look at, I haven't reviewed my huddle vision and all the stuff yet, and we haven't had our team coaching. That'll be tomorrow night. But I did see on, like on AFL.com after that night, I saw it on Fox Sports. I saw the replay, but I haven't seen all the angles. So, Houston doesn't lift his arm or elbow him or anything. He doesn't leave the ground. He definitely lines him up and does nothing other than elect to bump. We know that to be true. What we also know to be true is that subsequently Isaac Rankin was concussed, and the game can't have that, right? We can't have that. The more we know about concussion and all those things, we can't have that. But as I said, you're allowed to bump. So unless the umpire with their line of sight sees high contact made, what's to say that it wasn't his head hitting the ground, Cole, that knocked him out? So that wouldn't be a warranted free kick for high contact, would it?
No.
If it was a fair and legal bump and there was no high contact as a result of the bump, and I'm not saying that there wasn't, I haven't seen all the angles right. I'm just talking about the rules. So if he bumps him and gets him in the head with the bump, well, clearly it's a free kick and a report, right? But if he bumps him and spears him, and as a result, the force is such that he goes back and hits his head on the ground and is concussed, it doesn't warrant a free kick being paid because there's been no high contact made. However, post-game, as a result of him electing to bump a player's been concussed, that's a different story for suspension laws of the game in that sense. So I'm not saying he didn't get him high. I haven't seen it all yet. What I'm saying is that if we're looking at the rules, I too can understand why the umpire who's in control didn't necessarily award a free kick because he may not have seen any high contact made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're bloody challenging, mate.
100%. It's really tough. I actually was sitting in the grandstand alongside Mickey Avon, who you umpire.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So we had a good chat about it. And we had access to a replay pretty much straight away because I said to Mick, if he hasn't got him high, he's entitled to bump.
Correct.
But then I've seen the replay, I said, I reckon there's high contact. And so that was my take on it is I can understand why play on was called. And there's been all the, the know-alls that come out and say, why didn't umpire pay for a kick? But at the end of the day, it's going to be in trouble as a result. And I guess the question I have for you is, what about changing the rule to take the shirt front bump out of the game?
Yeah, and so and that's what these things inevitably raise. And I saw there was a comment there about err on the side, and I don't want to speak for other levels of officiating because, I know that we're very fortunate at AFL level. We don't get all in fist fights, and we don't get people jumping the fence, and we don't get king hits as such, and those sorts of things anymore. That's very, very rare. And we have all the match review officer and all the TV cameras and all of the things. So it's different. And I want to acknowledge that you guys are the real heroes, right? Like at community level, that's way harder, way, way harder. So I'll leave the coaching around the err on the side to you, Cole, because I suspect that you would, in that case, from a management perspective, etc., lean in and pay free kick and make sure that you take the sting out of it. It makes absolute sense. So the person who wrote that comment, thumbs up. I love your instincts with that. But what we trade in, that's not the case. If you don't see it, you don't guess. And if you're going to guess, then it's very hard to respect a person's decisional integrity if they're going to guess. And if you don't see it, you just got to wear that. I had a marking contest that was very, very weird. And again, I haven't seen that back yet, but I suspect I've got a missed block marking interference with Thilthorpe and Jones. Now it's not as cut and dry as people might think it is. Jones is coming out and he's got no intention other than to contest the footy. Thilthorpe's coming back and he trains the ball with his eyes the whole way, right? And they're going in different angles, but they're converging, all right? And right at the death, Thilthorpe sees Jones coming at him like a shower of shit and jumping in the air, and he goes like that. So it's not stepping off your line to bump and block. It's not shirt fronting the guy front on in a marking contest. It's, holy shit, I'm about to get a knee in my head. And he does that. And by virtue of the contact, he's kind of tunneled, yeah? And Jones hits the ground real hard and he gets hurt. Okay. So is it a free kick?
Yeah.
I don't know yet. I've got my, I'm doing it after this. I've got to go and jump in my huddle and look at all the different camera angles. But I get one look, one go. Phil Thorpe's sole objective is to contest the football, nothing else. And right at the death, he goes, this bloke's about to cave my head in. So he protects himself. So does that constitute a marking contest free kick? I don't know. But it is an error. And my point being is I'm not going to guess.
Yeah.
Yeah? So if I've cocked it up, I've got to live with that. Do I like it? No, I don't, mate. I hate making mistakes.
Yeah.
I've been making them for 20 years, and we all do, right? But I hate making them. But I'm not going to guess and get it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to get it wrong by not, if I get it wrong, I get it wrong, but I'm not going to guess and get it wrong. Players won't cop that. Not at AFL level.
I think you've summed up really, really well. And yes, Rob Kane, who did write that comment, at a local level, what I would want is if you see something like that, a shirt front bump, and you're not sure if it's high or not, err on the side of paying it. And we've got the access to cards, and if there's a whole lot of remonstration, you know, use a yellow card, get him off. And if you absolutely see the high contact, then it's going to be a red card. So yeah, it's a different ball game at our level.
Absolutely. And again, I have absolute respect because that whole management piece around that environment, you know, your umpires, you guys and girls are so important to keeping the peace. And that management thing is really challenging. But I implore you for what you do because it's really, really super important. Yeah.
All right, now I've hogged it like I didn't intend to. I've got Matt Harris putting his hand up. So from here on in, if you want to ask Ray a question, unmute yourself and I'll invite you onto the call. But Matt, you can go first.
Thanks, mate. Just on the Dan Houston one, surely with that, it could be charging because it was unreasonable in the circumstances coming through and line them up.
So that's a really good question. It started as a question, Matt, and then it turned into a statement, which I found quite interesting. Yeah. So I might just pull you up on that. And I think, and not to be a turd, I really love that you've jumped in, mate. So thank you. But what I think is really important about this, and we challenge one another in our coaching sessions around this, is don't go leading the witness. So the question is it rough conduct? Yeah. For something that's unnecessary or unreasonable in the circumstances. So my challenge to you would be, well, it's general play. Okay.
Yep.
And this is at AFL level, which again, I want to be really clear, is distinctly different to community level where Cole will be setting the agenda, not me. Okay. But at AFL level, the laws of the game permit you to bump. You're not allowed to bump him in the head, right? You can't bump him in the back, but you can spear him in the side or down the front as hard as you like in general play if he should be expecting to be met in that situation. Well, he's in possession of the football. He's taking possession of the football. He should be expecting to be met. Now, if he gets him high and Cole says there's a replay that says he got him high, that's a free kick, mate. That's a free kick for high contact and a report for a bump to the head, right? But I wouldn't think, and I thought about this today, so that's why I was pretty ready, prepared to talk about this one.
Yep.
I don't think it's unnecessary or unreasonable. I don't think it meets that. I don't think it meets those thresholds. But it's a very interesting question.
Yeah. No, thanks, Matt. Someone from on a Samsung unmuted himself, and it was making too much noise, so I muted you again. So if you want to mute yourself, there you go. Whoever it is, come on.
We've got Makita, is it? No.
No, it's someone on a Samsung just unmute himself.
No, I thought you had a question.
That's yeah, it's me. It's me. It's Andre Razor.
Andre.
How are you, mate? How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Congratulations on an incredible career there, mate. Hopefully they have a big banner for you on the Friday. And deservedly so. Hey, just on that same issue, the play of the century, old Lethal Lee, has been waving the flag on send-off rule.
Yeah.
What would you think about that? I gave it great thought, and I think that will certainly, double the process of somebody going in hard. They'll kind of, that thought will they'll go the other way a little bit. And I think it'll be a great idea. What do you think about that?
So, well, first of all, thanks so much for the statement. I really appreciate that. I don't know whether it'll be. We might give the banner the flick. That Sam Pang will never let me live that down. But in terms of the send off, it's really interesting, and I always defer to the coaches and the players on this one, and I mean like the AFL club, like John Longmire, or you know what I mean, because they appreciate and understand the thrust and parry in that 2 hours better than us. We understand the laws, I think, better than clubs. I truly believe that to be true. But they understand the machinations around and the impacts around these types of things on game. And John has spoken about previously, and he's a man I respect deeply because he has great control over his emotions. He's able to keep his shit together no matter how angry he gets. And he's talked about a team offended against, and on this instance, it was Adelaide. Okay. Adelaide shouldn't be disadvantaged during those 2 hours. Yes, the system will take care of, in this instance, Dan will have to go to the tribunal and that'll unfold, right? And that'll all happen. But at that point, Adelaide should not be worse off in terms of rotations or an ability to activate a sub or whatever. So I would defer to them more so than having umpires determine what that should or shouldn't be. But you point around an additional deterrent, because a player goes, Jesus, if I spear him like that and I get it wrong, not only am I going to cop, say it's a grand final, not only am I going to cop 4 to 8 next year, I'm going to get sent off in a grand final. So I think you've got a very good point there, and I think there's some weight, and I think it should be considered. But in consultation with the coaches and the players, yeah?
You have changed your mind, Ray, because I heard you and Jared Waitley not so long ago say that you didn't want one.
No, I don't like it because I think we cock enough up, Cole, already. Yeah. I think we make enough mistakes because we're human, not because we're incompetent. And I worry about that. I worry about someone getting it wrong. We get score review wrong sometimes. We had a score review happening, a silent review in that game on Saturday night, and we started the play and we shouldn't have. We gave them a 666 warning. They shouldn't have incurred that because a player had gone off under an injury situation. And so we're meant to wait until they come on. So because we're human, we get things wrong. And I would loathe to see a player sent and then on review, they go, shit, we got that wrong. That's what I worry about. That being said, the more this has happened and the more I hear, as I said, to guys like John Longmire, Lee Matthews, these types of people, you gotta have an open mind when people with that experience and that level of expertise voice a view. You don't have to always align, but you need to have an open mind, I think.
Oh, very good. So we've got Frank wanting to ask a question, then Alex, so and then Mike. So we've got lined up. Frank,
let's go.
Yeah, Ray, firstly, well done on what you've accomplished, obviously, year to date and obviously over your career. And obviously what you've done for umpiring as well, as Colin's touched on. Colin initially touched on another point around the showdowns and where they sit, I guess, in games that you've umpired, which I wanted to touch on, but Cole's covered that. I was actually going to ask you about the drawn grand final and what that was like, obviously the build-up, but then having the build-up of a replay and having to go back the following week. What was that like?
Well, thank you very much, A, for the question, B, for your kind words. That drawn grand final was incredible. Very unique. Obviously, we won't have one of those again. The following week was so hard because no parades, no dinners, no luncheons, all of that. So it was a very different week. Even though you turned up, there's another 100,000 there again. It's a grand final again. So you're still toey. It was a step down on what the week prior was. You know, they didn't have any crazy pre-match entertainment and whatever. I think they had Hudson came in a helicopter or something ridiculous and presented the football. So it was different. I wouldn't swap it for anything. It was the best. It was unique. It was my first grand final in the second in a week later. But the other thing it was, you carry the stress because you just want to breathe out and go, we didn't cock it up and it's done and we can go on holiday. And we had to carry that for another week. But it was an incredible time and definitely one of the highlights of the 20 years. Yeah.
Alex.
Yeah, Ray, I echo what Frank and Andre have said, obviously, about your career. You mentioned the point about you guys knowing more about the rules than what Clubland do. I think that extends to commentators as well.
Yes.
Given you've had some pretty heavy involvement in the media of late, do you think it's something worth going down the path of the American style, having someone explain the rules in those tricky situations? And is that something that you would look to engage in?
Thanks again. Great question. I think we're always going to debate free kick, right? So we know that 50,000 go ball, 50,000 go back. We call play on, right? 100,000 go nuts because we're no good. So that's the beauty of the laws of Australian rules football. They are subjective in their very nature. They're written that way, right? So debate's great. Cheering's great. Misinformation's shite. And it gets peddled out every 4 minutes no matter what broadcaster it is. And it does no one any good. It doesn't do the broadcast any good. It doesn't do the fans any good. And it certainly doesn't serve us. So I truly believe that that's one of the greatest opportunities for the game in terms of how it educates its fans as to what the hell's going on out there in the product and why. I know broadcasters are super interested. I've had some meetings and things like that personally. I'm still debating with them is this, right? I'm an umpiring person, mate, right? I love it. I love being an umpire. I love this. Cole said, yes, absolutely, I'll do this. I love this. We're all in the same team, in the same ditch, right? So I don't need to be on there potting the shit out of umpires because they're lined up from here to Warrnambool to do that. You got plenty of people to do that. If you were to do it and we made an error, you have to say it, right? And I've got no drama with that. Oh, that should have been holding the ball. Draper dived on it, right? I'm happy to do that. But I'm not going to pot the umpire. I'm going to talk about the rule. I'm going to talk about what the league's asking of their umpires and why. But I'm not going to pot them. And if they've got a problem with that, well, then it's not for me.
Yeah, we look forward to how that evolves. Mike Raymond.
Hey, g'day, Ray. Mate, Colin told me to be really quick with this because I think we all know that I could just have my own Zoom meeting with you, mate, and I'd love it. And so would my son sitting next to me. Mate, you spoke about the voice. All I want to say is please keep embracing it, even into your retirement. And please, like you're talking tonight, you're explaining your love for the game. You're talking about your passion and you're explaining decisions. And please join the media and do that in the future. I'm the biggest supporter for umpiring with kids and adults and women and men. And mate, it would be my privilege. My 300th game is coming up next year, and I've got a lot of mates in this umpire group.
Yep.
And I thought of it last week, and I thought there's only one person I'd want to do it with. So, mate, if we can have a think about getting you over to Adelaide, it'll be about this time next year, and umpiring the 300 together. It would be my pleasure to do that with you.
Geez, I tell you what, that's quite, mate. Well, first of all, congratulations in advance that you're approaching it that you've been at the crease for that long. Well played, sir.
Thank you.
And any milestone, regardless of what level, is so cool. So first of all, good luck with it. Second of all, I'm not saying no. So let's get there and see where we're all at, right?
Yep.
I had eyes on 400 and pinged a calf and did something else after an injection in a nerve and it went to shit. So I've pulled up short. So don't count your games yet.
No, good call. Good call.
Get there. And then obviously Cole's got my details and we can go from there and see what we can figure out. All right.
Oh, mate, that's awesome.
So I had a question in there. What's harder, prelim or grand final? I believe that for us, the most difficult game ever to umpire is a prelim final because you cannot help but be factoring in what could potentially be next week. We're also, in the history of the game, I'm rounding it off, there's been 60 people have the privilege to umpire an AFL, VFL grand final in the field. In the history of the game, 60, right? They don't just fucking give them away. And so you go out there and all that matters are those 2 hours. You don't have to bounce it higher, blow your whistle louder, none of those things. It's the same bag, right? But you cannot help. I don't give a crap who you are. The challenge is can you compartmentalize and put that other crap that actually doesn't help at all and is unnecessary and not relevant to the task at hand on prelim final? But I'll tell you now, I've done prelims and I've done them well, and I've done prelims and I haven't done them so well. And I had 6 of them, and you do one on the Friday night and you don't get the phone call until Monday. You don't sleep. Like you do not sleep for 2-3 days. It's the worst in the world waiting to find out, am I going to get the nod or not? So yeah, prelims are the toughest. No shadow of a doubt.
We've got a couple of minutes left. A couple of things. Tell us briefly about your foundation, your charity.
Chamberlain Foundation's original name. We spent a lot of time on it. You can tell, Cole. We hold events and do bits and pieces to raise money. And we take that because we're not experts in this field. We're just passionately aligned. And then we fund programs that experts are running that support suicide prevention and grief and loss support for those left behind, particularly kids. So our family, and we're not special, that's the point, have had some very direct relationship with suicide. And that proved to be the catalyst for us to do these things. They're always joyous events, Cole. We celebrate what we're doing. We don't get too heavy on the stats and all that. Everyone who's there gets that. So, the Hughesies, the Pete Rose Dawns, all of those we've had all the gun comedians come through the joint and speakers. And yeah, that's the vibe. So that's what we do, mate. And footy has been, that's part of that whole thing that I talked about. If I come back, I'm leaning in. That's one of the coolest things that's come out of whatever this Razor thing is that I don't even understand.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Tip for the grand final umpires for this year. Have you got anyone you think gonna?
All right. If I had to guess,
Yeah.
right, if I had to give a tip, clearly history is generally a great indicator about moving forward. So that doesn't mean it's the same umpires, but the AFL are gagging to pick a debutant, right? So have a look on your list, on your little who's playing at home, who hasn't done one before, right? I think it makes the coaches look like they're doing a great job because they've been able to blood a new guy. But I also think it's a wonderful thing for our group, right? Now that I can no longer do them, I hope that everyone gets the opportunity to do it. And I know they won't, but such is the week and such is the magnitude of it. It's a brilliant experience, and I wish that everyone could experience it. So you'll get a debutant. They'll have at least 2 old heads. So maybe 1 debutant, maybe 2. So that's probably the guideline that I'd give you for those playing at home.
Very good. Hey, we're about to get locked out of this Zoom. Thank you so much for coming on. Congratulations on an amazing career, and enjoy this Friday night.
Guys and girls, thanks so much for your time tonight. And hey, keep up the good work. Without us, there is no game. You reckon they noticed us on Saturday night? If we don't front up next week, they'll notice us more. So keep up the great work. You're all doing a brilliant job.
Brilliant. And that's the last Zoom for the year. We've had a great year. Look forward to seeing you all at training the next few weeks. And enjoy the finals, guys. It's a special time of year. Thanks again, Ray. Absolutely fantastic.
See you,
Thanks,
mate.
Razor. I'll make that banner for you, mate.
Legend.